So the topic is kids. When do you push them and when do you back off? So hard, especially as kids get older, but I think it's something that's probably an issue even when they're younger, like 8, and they can start having opinions about the things they want to be doing. But before we start, as always, I'm going to pull a card from my little deck of cards here. And let's see what we have today. Life is a marvelous, transitory adventure. Life is a marvelous, transitory adventure. Nikki Giovanni. I don't know that there's much to unpack there. That just seems kind of pretty straightforward. Maybe it's the transitory part that is a little bit philosophical. I don't know. Does this spark any thoughts for you, Kim?
I mean, to be honest, considering like the things I'm stressed about right now, it kind of makes me think, you know what, you're right. It's just a blip in the whole realm of time, and maybe it's really not that important what
That's
I'm
great.
stressing about.
So explain a little bit more about what it is you're going through today that has you feeling this way.
So today is college signing day, which means high school seniors have to choose where they're going to college. And my son is in that predicament right now where we thought we had figured that out, and then things shifted, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, so we're kind of down to the wire making that choice. And it's kind of along the lines of this topic. He's got different ideas about what he wants from a college than maybe where I would like to see him go. So I'm trying to just take a breath and let him make the decision and be okay with it. But it's stressful he's trying to figure some things out very last minute. So the deadline, and then also just being okay with where we end up, knowing it'll all be fine. But in the moment, sometimes it's hard to get there.
Absolutely. Okay, well, so I feel like this was just the perfect segue. So let's just get into the topic. So, and also, can you give a little bit of background about what it is that you do? Because this
Sure.
is kind of just a big day in terms of what you do.
Yes. So I am a college counselor, independent educational consultant, which means that, we work one-on-one with high school students and families as they're going through the college application process. We work with them anywhere from, ninth grade or eighth or ninth grade sometimes till they get to college. Sometimes they come to us a couple months before, applications are due. So, anywhere in the process that people need help, they come to us and we work with them. And so a lot of it does involve, when students start earlier, helping them figure out, what type of activities that they're doing. And, for us, it's really about helping them sort of dig into not just what are you doing, but like, why are you doing these things? What's sort of your driver, and helping them kind of take it to a deeper level than just sort of, oh, let's just join a bunch of clubs for college. Like, no,
Mhm.
let's really get to know you and make this a real
Right.
meaningful process. And I actually came to this from doing some K-12 consulting, helping people figure out, elementary school, even preschool. So I sort of kind of evolved into it, I guess, but it's definitely relevant to the question we're talking about, because it's always something on parents' minds. What should we be doing? They're just worried about the future for their kids.
And so really what you're talking about is you help students kind of craft the story that they're going to be telling colleges as to who they are and what it is they want to do in life and why their college is the right step on that path.
Exactly. We're really helping kind of shape the narrative. I mean, not in sort of a contrived sense at all. I always remind students, like, this is great for college, but we're really doing this for you, because the more you learn about what you like and what you don't like, and where what is it you want to be learning, and it helps you to take those steps before you get to college, so you can be a little bit more focused and know what you want to do. And of course, it helps us find the colleges that are the best fit for you as you do this. So,
Right.
it's not just about like, oh, let's just make you, the top college applicant. Like,
Mhm.
we try to go a little bit deeper than that. And we call it finding the gifts in the process, by
Mhm.
helping them get to know themselves better as they go through this. So,
Right.
yeah.
And Kim and I have known each other for 20 something years. We've
I think so.
we've known each other since before we had kids. And Kim actually helped advise me on how to get my child into the magnet that she wanted to get into. So she's
Yeah.
very knowledgeable about, education, and especially in the LA area, although
Yeah.
you are going to be moving at some point. But if you're interested in working with Kim or someone like Kim, I will put her contact information in the show notes of the Harness the Power of Planning podcast, which this live talk always goes up as the Harness the Power of Planning podcast if you want to listen to it recorded later. Okay. So, if you can you tell us a little bit more about the struggle that your son is facing? So, I guess he had decided on a specific college up until what point? Yesterday? This morning? What happened there?
Up until last week, he had gotten into a specific program at that college that we were
Mhm.
very excited about. But then we found out that he actually, the kids in that program can't take classes in the fall on campus. And he was just very disappointed. He didn't want to be on a spring summer calendar.
Um,
Colleges are starting to do, just very brief aside, they're starting to try to figure out more ways to get more kids on campus, right? And so that often involves a summer calendar now. And their spring starts are more common. That was fine. We were willing to do that. He was going to go study abroad in the fall, then start in the spring. But then when he found out, no, every year you couldn't take classes on campus in the fall, that really sort of changed the whole experience, and he
so
changed his mind.
how common is this? I haven't heard about the I mean, I'm not in this age range. How many schools are doing this summer, spring, summer?
Well, that's just it. I had not heard, even as a counselor, of a full spring summer calendar like
Oh,
for four
interesting.
years.
Okay.
A lot of schools are doing spring start, which means the first semester kids do other things. They go abroad, maybe they take community college classes, they do, something else, they can work.
Right.
That's becoming a little more common, but not, fully common. But I had heard of that,
Interesting.
but I had not heard of this particular thing. So that was a surprise to us.
Okay, that's a change. Interesting. Okay.
Yes.
And so now he's thinking about a different school because of this.
Well, then he went to visit the school that was his second choice again. He wanted to go see it again, and he just got a different vibe. And he just said, I don't think this is a school for me. So we sort of were at square one, like this week, as this date is coming up upon us. And he's being really good and doing his due diligence and calling admissions and trying to find out. There's obviously such a broad array of factors, and money is a big one. And he's trying to figure out where he's going to be most comfortable and what makes the most sense. And I always say to even my students that I work with, colleges are really at the end of the day more similar than they are different. Like, you're going to go live with roommates, and you're going to meet great friends, and you're going to go to classes together and go hang out, go to the rec center and go to parties. And there's a
Right.
lot of similar experiences. Like,
Mhm.
you know it's really about not so much where you go, but what you do while you're there. So, just kind of keep coming back to that. Like, it's all going
Right.
to be okay.
And so is the decision that he's looking to make, is it one that you're not sure you agree with? Is that where you're talking about the struggle about letting him do?
Yeah. So one of the other colleges he did really like, nothing wrong with it, great school. But you know, the UCs are very difficult to get into, and he did get into two of them, and they're not perfect. Don't get me wrong, they're not golden. They have their own issues.
Mhm.
But I was really hopeful that he was going to pick one of those. And the
Mm.
school that he picked, I just felt like, probably, I don't know, I just didn't get the feel it was the best fit for him. But I'm
Mm.
trying to, step back and just, I ask him questions, I give him some ideas and things to think about. But I have to let him make this choice at the end of the day, right? It's his life. I mean, obviously the money piece comes in, but that's not factoring into the schools that he's deciding between.
Mhm.
So, um, so yeah, it's really hard to bite your tongue sometimes.
So, this we were talking about this, I think maybe we were talking about it, I think, in terms of athletics specifically originally on our walk, because I know my kiddo, I have, when she was younger, let's say, 5 to 10 or 11, I just wanted to expose her. Actually, let's earlier, because actually I put her in her first mommy and me ballet class at 2. So at 2, we started sort of exploring things. And I thought my job is just to expose her to the
Yeah,
things that are out there. Because if you don't know that something exists, it's kind of hard to say, I want to do that thing. So I just wanted
right.
to expose her to things. And one of the things, like, I exposed her to lots of dance and nothing really stuck. And then we did soccer because I love soccer and we're in Southern California.
Right.
And the interesting thing about my kiddo is she never wanted to be where the ball was. It was like she was shadowing the ref, just kind of like running up and down the sidelines. And so I thought to myself, well, that's a sport as well. And I enrolled her in track and field, and she loved track and field right from the get go. However, while she really enjoys track and field, she doesn't have a particular uh, you know, she's not particularly blessed in track and field. And not that you always have to be blessed because, gifts are one thing, but hard work is another. Ask Michael
Right.
Jordan.
Right.
And she also didn't seem to want to put in the hard work to be a track and field athlete. However, the thing she is most naturally gifted at is archery.
Mm.
Just such a knack for archery. And I think it probably came up because I probably mentioned to you that she has wanted to quit archery.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm really sensitive to this because I know that I feel like the generation I grew up with, and maybe I'm speaking for too many people, maybe I should just say myself. I feel like I was encouraged to only pursue things that I was naturally good at,
Mhm.
and I think there were things that maybe I wasn't as good at, but I was pretty good at them. But if I'd just been given a little bit of a, why don't you stick with that a little bit and see where it goes? I think
Yeah.
that might have been more what I needed. So I've kind of been hyper aware about this with my kiddo. And
Yeah.
she keeps saying she wants to go back to track, but she's really just hanging out with friends at the track is the thing. And so
Right.
I've said, "You know what? I'm not this is something you don't know what how you don't know how rare it is to be good at something like this in this way,
Right.
and I want you to take it a little bit further." And so fast forward now a few months, and she started doing junior Olympic archery classes, and she just did her second class, and she did her first competition, and she did so well in her competition.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and they give you these little pins, and she earned 4 pins, and she was so proud that I said, "Oh, well, let's put this with your archery stuff." And then, because a lot of kids, they'll wear, if they've earned pins, they'll wear them
Mm.
where their arrows are on the whatever that is, it a quiver? I don't know what it's called. Whatever that little sack of arrows thing is, they'll put it on there. And she said, "No, no, I wanna put it on my backpack. I wanna take it to school." That's how
Oh, wow.
proud of it she
Yeah.
was. And so, I think I made the right choice in this case. I don't
Right.
know that it's always that I'm always gonna make the right choice. I don't
Right.
know if I don't know if you have something similar to that with your kids.
Yeah.
I know both of your sons do a lot of sports.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely went through a similar thing. I mean, I think in some sense we are all reacting to how we grew up, right? When we make
Absolutely.
decisions like this. And I
Mhm.
remember thinking, I wish my parents had, I sort of had those 70s, 80s hands-off parents, where I literally like signed myself up for swim team and rode my bike there. And, like it
Yeah.
just was, they were so kind of whatever. And I sometimes look back and say, I wish they had given me more advice or pushed me or helped me find a direction, right? And
Mhm.
so, my older son was very driven with sports and he just signed me up, signed me up. And sometimes I think people thought we were overscheduled, like I was pushing it. And I was like, no, this kid has a ton of energy and he just loves it, right?
Yeah.
But then it was hard later when he got older and he had to start pulling back and making those decisions. And same thing, like, there's a sport that he was really good at. And the coach was like, I could see him doing this in college. And then when he wanted to give it up, you're like, are you sure? Like he's got a talent here, And I remember asking him I think when he was in high school, because he could be kind of stubborn and fight me. And I would say, tell me, do you want me to push you or do you want me to back off? And I would try to just kind of explain what I was trying to do. Like, I'm not trying to force you to do things. I'm just trying to help you kind of think it through a little bit more.
Mhm.
And there were days when he would be like, just, back off. But there would be other days where he would think about it and go like, okay, I do want you to kind of push me a little bit, And kids are different. And honestly, with certain things, sometimes you just don't know. Like, are they not liking it to your point because they don't really, maybe their friends aren't doing it, or maybe they don't
Right,
like the coach that season, or,
right.
it's sometimes hard to kind of think through those things. And maybe you do let them take a break and see if they miss it and they want to go
Mhm,
back to it.
mhm.
There's so many factors from their age to the situation to, again, like sort of looking back at our own experiences and what we kind of wish for ourselves. So,
Well, I also think too, just asking the questions of, why are you giving it up? I
yeah,
think we don't, as humans, we don't always think about the different topics until someone asks us a question or we ask ourselves a question. I have a habit actually of I'm reaching over for this journal. I'm going to pull it up. It's a writing prompt journal,
mhm,
and I have a habit of every morning answering one of the questions because the questions are, thought provoking, but they're also just so random that they cause me to think about things that
right,
maybe I hadn't thought about before. And I think that's how you get really clear about what's important to you is when you think about these questions. So
right,
I think that's an excellent question. Like, hey, if you're only doing this sport to see your friends, maybe we can see your friends another way. And,
right,
"Oh, okay, yeah, that's a good idea, let's do that." So, I think just,
right.
critical thinking skills that you're developing by asking these questions is really helpful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And honestly, if it is a sport that just makes your kid happy and builds their confidence, that's huge too. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm not gonna veer into the whole, like, teen mental health thing. I'm not. I saw one of the questions. No, I'm not a clinical psychologist,
Right,
but, but I do see the effects of anxiety on kids, especially when it comes to something as stressful as a college application process, and that's something we really work to take the stress out and to just
mhm.
really help build their confidence. So, it's not that they have to do something that's gonna get them a college scholarship or, look so good on their application. The value of having a happy kid is
Yeah,
huge.
yeah.
So,
Well, and it was interesting too, because one of the reasons why we chose the track and field team that we decided to go with was because the coach's mentality was, "We just want the younger kids to just enjoy themselves."
yeah,
And the coach who leads the whole thing, his child had gone to school on a track and college on a track and field scholarship. And there were others like that as well among the other coaches. So they knew what it took
right.
to be a high level athlete, but they also knew that kids could burn out
Yeah,
too early and then not, even if they were gifted and they loved it, they could just be tired of it by the time they got to high school. So I think it's a testament to the fact that my kid was obviously not tired of it. And I told her I would let her run track again, but she had to have certain grades in
right,
order to take on another extracurricular because track is it's a 4-day a week sport, right?
right.
And that 4th day, the track meet is all day long.
Yeah,
So,
yes,
it's not like a 3-hour game. I wish
right.
it was a 3-hour game. No, you're there from 8 a.m. to, 4 p.m.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I think you have to, just figure out what works for your kiddo, ask the questions. I remember when I was pregnant and I was expecting and I started reading some of these, parenting books and nothing really captured my attention, and then I listened to this radio show, and this woman said that her grandmother, who was not American born, her grandmother said to her, "Read the child, not the book." And I thought
mm,
that was the best parenting advice I could have had because you for you you can find a book to support any theory out there. And I
right,
felt like for me, what I was reading was causing me to question my instincts
right,
and values. And so really I think just focusing on my kiddo and asking the questions and, reading her interests, like with the soccer thing when I was like, "Hey, it looks like you want to be a ref, not a soccer player."
right.
Okay. Even though I would have loved for her to play soccer, that's not where her interests were. So,
Yeah. No, it's really true. And I mean, in sort of that same vein, it's very easy to start comparing to other families and other kids, and that happens a lot. And I see this a lot in college admissions where people are like, want to push their kids to do 100 things so they can get into a top college. And they don't understand why, their kid isn't doing it. Right. And
mhm,
I really, in the gentlest way possible, try to tell them, like, we are all built differently. I mean, some of the kids that go to Harvard, for example, they are just blessed. I mean, they can take AP classes and not blink an eye, get it done,
Right.
no problem. You know,
Yeah.
start a foundation, do 100 things. It's almost like comparing yourself to people who maybe, like, I don't know, run for president, right? Like, I couldn't do
Mm.
that. I don't
Mhm.
have, I'm not built that way, right? Like,
Mhm.
and it's okay if your kid isn't that person. And let's discover who they are and what their interests are, because that's what they're naturally going to want to do. Now, granted, there's other situations. I mean, a lot of kids do suffer, even just, with ADD, sometimes that builds in a procrastination and a resistance to doing things. A lot of kids these days have this perfectionism. They're afraid to fail. So they're afraid to take risks and do anything
Mm.
outside the box because
Mhm.
they might not be good at it. And that could sink their college plans, right? Like, so there's a lot of different things that go into it. But I like what you said about reading your child and just trying to respond to them as individually and not comparing to everybody else and what the rest of the world is doing. I know that is much easier said than done, particularly in a place like Los Angeles.
Right.
But I think it's valuable advice.
And so in terms of like it's interesting what we were talking about, the quote that had come up, life is a marvelous transitory adventure, Nikki Giovanni, and how you were saying, yeah, college, they're kind of all giving you this similar experience, and I just wanted to add my story, which is that I didn't end up going to the school that I had planned to go to for a long time. Like at
Mm,
the last minute, I switched. And it's kind of a funny story actually, because I had my heart set on this one school because I had visited it when I was very young, and I got into it early admissions. So I was going to that school, and it's a school on the East Coast. And so I was planning to go to the school, and my dad had always said, "Well, you have to study business. You have to go to business school." And I did not want to study business, but I was getting to go to the school I wanted, so that was more important to me than the subject matter. And then literally March of my senior year, my dad said, "Okay, if you go to the school I want you to go to, you can study whatever you want." Because that's how badly he wanted me to stay.
oh,
And
wow.
and at that point, I'd been having some reservations about going back east. Like I learned about seasonal affective disorder and like other
Yeah.
these other things. And I thought to myself, like, maybe I don't want to be over there. And I did end up going to the school that he wanted me to go to, and I got to study everything I wanted to study, like exactly what I wanted to study. And actually, the school I ended up going to had more like option like has had the most professional schools of any university in the country. So there were just so many options. And I
Right.
feel like I ended up getting exactly the education I was meant to get.
Right.
So, you can be walking on a path and you see a detour and it might not seem like the right path, and you probably won't know right away.
No, for sure. I do think we often end up right where we're supposed to be, right? And we kind of bring all this angst into it a little bit
Mhm.
unnecessarily. Not that there's not things that you have to figure out, and you don't just flip a coin randomly. But once you've sort of figured out what you want and you've done your due diligence, like, just trust, right? That it's
Mhm.
going to be okay. You're going to be in the right place.
Yeah, and it's funny because when some people hear that story, they're like, "I can't believe your dad did that to you." Like, how, manipulative, and, "I can't believe he didn't want you to go to that amazing East Coast school with that amazing brand name." And you know what? Like, I feel like I ended up exactly where I was supposed to be, and so, maybe that was just my dad was just the messenger. I don't know why he felt the need to step in that way, because he
Right.
certainly didn't step in other times in my life when I was like, "Maybe you should have stepped in there."
Right.
So, I think yeah, I think I ended up exactly where I was supposed to be. So, it was great.
Good. Yeah. It worked out.
Yes. Well, I think everything is probably gonna work out for your son as well then,
Thank
having
you. I think it will.
now that we've walked through all of this, I think that's the takeaway. So, we'll have to talk about it in, 5 or 10 or 20 years and
Yeah, exactly, right?
and
Laugh
see what
about
he
it.
said. Exactly. Well,
Uh,
thank you so much for joining me, Kim, and I will put
yeah,
links to Kim in the show notes so that you can, maybe you've never heard of an educational consultant or a college application consultant, and you can hear she really focuses on the individual student. So I think that's
Yeah.
a great way of looking at it. And thank you for joining me for the Harness the Power of Planning podcast. If you're interested in taking your planning to the next level, feel free to check out my website, bywdreams.com. And, I've got my books. We kind of jumped right into it today. We had a little technical difficulty right at the top of the show, so I didn't get to, talk about the things I usually talk about, but go to bywdreams.com and you'll find everything there. And remember, planning makes everything easier. Bye.